Welcome to a short preview of this ScreenCastsOnline video tutorial.
This week, we'll be revisiting Drafts version 5 for iOS, a great note-taking app that makes it really easy to capture whatever is on your mind and then send that text to the appropriate place later. In episode 739, we gave you an introduction to the application itself, but we heard from several people who asked for a deeper dive into the powerful export actions that make Drafts such a powerful productivity app. So in this episode, we're going to walk through the different types of export action steps you can use when creating your own export actions and explain what they do. After watching this tutorial, you'll have a better idea of what you can do with the export actions in Drafts and how you can use these building blocks to build your own productivity workflows on your iOS devices. Let's get started. Before we get started, I should point out that everything I'm about to show you with these export actions requires the Pro version of Drafts. Drafts Pro is $4.99 a month and is required if you want the ability to create and edit actions. You can activate the Pro version by going into the settings in Drafts, but you're going to have to make sure that this is enabled before you can create and edit actions like we're about to do. All right, so with that disclaimer out of the way, let's dig into this application. Depending on your settings, Drafts may give you a blank slate when you first open the application. In this particular case, I have a note that I captured when I was out and about. I heard about a book that I wanted to read, and this is the perfect type of thing to put into Drafts because I don't want to do anything with this right now. I just want to jot this down, and then I can take appropriate action on this idea later. In fact, I've got a bunch of these in Drafts. So this is the perfect thing to use as an example with this first export action type that we're going to take a look at, which is manipulating the clipboard. To set up an action, we need to tap on the export actions icon in the upper right. I've got my ScreenCastsOnline group here, but I've cleaned it out so we can start from scratch. I'm going to create a new action in this group by tapping on the plus icon in the lower right. And I'll have this option every time that I create one of these to add a new action or add one from the directory. The directory is definitely the easiest way to install actions into Drafts, but for the sake of this tutorial, we want to understand how each one of these export action steps works so that we can start building our own actions. So let's start from scratch and tap on Add New Action. We'll give this action a name of Append to Clipboard, and then where it says Steps, I'm going to tap on this and add steps to this export action. Right now, we have no steps defined. We're going to add one by tapping on the plus icon in the upper right, and we'll see all of the available step types in Drafts version 5. We're going to look at a lot of these and explain what they do to give you some ideas of how they can be strung together. This first one is Clipboard. So we can manipulate the contents of our system clipboard by tapping on this. We've got the template, so it's going to take the content from the draft, and then we can either replace, prepend, or append to the clipboard with the contents of this draft by using this draft token. I don't really want to duplicate, copy, and paste, but I do want to make a list of things. So I'm going to use append and then tap on save and exit to go back to our ScreenCastsOnline group, tap on cancel, and now we can trigger this action by tapping on it. So now I have Boundaries by Henry Cloud appended to my clipboard, so it's going to be added a line below whatever was on my clipboard previously, which happened to be the name of another book, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. So now I've got 2 books on my list. I can go back to my drafts and add a few more if I want. So let's close the action group and tap on the drafts icon in the upper left to see the other drafts that we have available.
That's just a quick preview of one of this week's Apple-related tutorials from ScreenCastsOnline. ScreenCastsOnline is your premium source of Apple-related video tutorials. All of our members get access to brand new, up-to-date tutorials each week, as well as unlimited access to our entire video archive full of Mac and iOS-related tutorials. You can stream and download all of our videos on your Mac, iPad and iPhone, and even your Apple TV using the members-only ScreenCastsOnline Apple TV app. Membership also includes a complimentary subscription to the digital ScreenCastsOnline monthly magazine, published each month and packed with videos, articles, reviews, as well as hints and tips covering all aspects of the Mac, iPad, iPhone, and all of the other fantastic Apple products. So, if you're ready to start getting the most out of your Apple devices, visit ScreenCastsOnline.com today and become a Screencasts Online member.